Representative Mac Thornberry of Texas. He's a Republican. He's chairman of the Armed Services Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for joining us. I know you were in some closed-door briefings with Secretary Kerry and others yesterday. Today, we are once again hearing a strong defense of this nuclear agreement with Iran. What's your alternative, assuming you're going to reject, as almost all Republicans will, reject this deal?
Well, I think there are three baskets of concerns. One is, will this deal be enforceable and verifiable? Another basket of concerns is, even if it's enforced perfectly, is it a good deal or not? And then the third area is all of Iran's other activities. I think the Obama administration has really hurt their credibility when they try to say it's a choice between this agreement or war. And that's basically the approach that they have put out there. I think a lot of folks think you can have a better agreement. There are some who believe that even no agreement would be better than this, which essentially ratifies Iran as a nuclear threshold state. We're going to have a hearing in the Armed Services Committee tomorrow morning to hear a panel of outside experts. But I think the more you dig into it, the skepticism on various aspects of this agreement is really growing on both sides of the aisle.
The Secretary says if there's no agreement, if Congress rejects it and overrides the president's expected veto, the international coalition, which imposed tough sanctions on Iran, will crumble. There will be nothing stopping Iran from going ahead developing a nuclear bomb, to which you say?
Well, I know the Secretary is proud of his work, and he wants to convince us all that this is absolutely the best deal that anyone could get. I think, though, it's a pretty far leap to say if you don't agree with the deal I negotiated, then Iran is off on its own, building a nuclear weapon, and all of the consequences that go from that. I don't think those two things necessarily follow from one another. But I also think there are increasing questions about verification. And so, for example, just last week, a major expose on how the inspectors in Syria, who were supposed to be looking for chemical weapons, were thwarted. And remember the close relationship between Iran and Syria. So the question that I think a lot of us are asking is, what's going to be different in Iran to make sure they comply versus what has happened in Syria, where it turns out they did not give up all their chemical weapons after all?
The rhetoric has really heated up, as you know, Mr. Chairman. Republican Senator Ted Cruz made a reference to this deal being what he called a jihadist stimulus deal. Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, he's compared John Kerry to Pontius Pilate. And, of course, we heard former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee's comments about this deal taking Israel, in his words, to the door of the oven, a reference to the Holocaust. How comfortable are you with this kind of rhetoric?
Oh, I'm uncomfortable with it all. I'm uncomfortable with what Senator Kerry's been saying, that it's this or war. I'm uncomfortable with all the comments that you just made. This is really serious business. I think one point on which opponents and supporters all agree is that this potential deal has far-reaching consequences. There will be a lot of implications in the Middle East and around the world that come from whatever happens with this agreement, whether it's enforced or not, whether it's ratified or not. And so that's the spirit that we ought to look at it. And I think most Republicans and most Democrats on the Hill are treating it in that serious way, in spite of the rhetoric that we hear from a few.
Let me get your quick thoughts on what's going on with Turkey right now, a key U.S. ally. It's getting more involved in this fight against ISIS, launching airstrikes now for the first time against ISIS targets in Syria, allowing the U.S., other NATO allies to use Incirlik NATO air bases in Turkey to launch strikes. But in addition to going after ISIS, the Turks are also launching airstrikes against Kurdish positions. As you know, the Kurds have been very forceful in fighting ISIS. How comfortable are you with what Turkey is up to right now?
Well, I'm not happy at all with Turkey bombing Kurdish positions. Look, we all want Turkey to play a greater role in pushing back against ISIS. And I think there are a number of details about that role still to be worked out, despite some of the press reports. But it is causing enormous problems to have Turkey using this opportunity to attack the Kurds when the Kurds have been some of the most effective fighting force against ISIS. So that sows dissension in the ranks. It causes a number of problems that the Obama administration and all of us have to deal with.
Representative Mac Thornberry of Texas is the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks as usual for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, we'll speak with a leading Democrat on in the House of Representatives about why he